What's going on, boys? It's Lonely MMA, and today we're going to be going over the nightmare timeline for every division inside the UFC. Now, first off, let's make sure we got our terms correct here. Mainly when I say the nightmare timeline for every division, I'm more so talking about ways the champion could lose, a champion losing to someone who's just not likable, is boring, or inactive, any of those three, just all that kind of stuff. Just stuff we do not want to see happen to a division. And I'm not going to be doing women's MMA here because I'm just not knowledgeable enough. I know some dude in Target just dropped to his knees hearing me say that. But without further ado, let's get straight into it and start off with none other than the Flyweight division. So Flyweight right now is actually one of the more exciting divisions, which is pretty funny for a division that is known for not being too exciting. But with Joshua Van absolutely showing levels in his last fight against Tatsuro Taira, gets a lot of people hyped for the rematch with Pantoja. So I'm getting real crafty with this nightmare timeline with this one, because I'm going to say Pantoja needs a lot more time than he expected, similar to Peter Yan after his last Merab fight, where he's just taken off copious amounts of time due to needing another surgery or getting injured again. Something like that happens. And then Joshua Van is forced to defend his belt against someone else in the meantime again, and he fights someone, let's say like Loner Kavanagh, gets his way up to a title shot, and Loner Kavanagh goes out there and wins. Then we lose out on one of the most, I'd say probably the most anticipated matchups since probably like TJ Dillashaw versus Henry Cejudo. Now that right there would be a nightmare timeline, and I could see it happen if Pantoja does need a little bit more time than expected. But more than likely, it does seem like Pantoja is ready to fight and is ready to get the rematch against Joshua Van, because he did look pretty good when he was sitting cage side at the last fight. So let's move on to Bantamweight. Now for Bantamweight, it's a weird sort of position we're in right now, because it's sort of just everyone waiting around for the trilogy to happen between Yan and Merab. Now personally for me, the most nightmarish timeline in this division is that the trilogy between the two goes to Merab and Merab wins it and is champion again, because then if he's champion, there's really not a lot of fresh and new matchups to do. Like him versus Mario Batista, although it would maybe be a competitive fight just because of how good Mario Batista has looked as of recently, no one would really care about it. It'd probably have the same amount of hype as a WNBA game. Like realistically, the only hyped matchup I could see for Merab if he does become champ again is the Umar rematch. Whereas if Yan and Sugar Sean won, that would be a great fight to have the rematch for the belt, because I definitely see them giving Sean a title shot after beating Ayman Zahabi on the White House card. And we'd just completely lose out on that fight if Merab does beat Yan in the trilogy. And another little nightmarish timeline for this division is if Sandhagen does lose to Mario Batista in like a devastating way, to the point where he drops a lot in the rankings, because then I really do not think that the Sean O'Malley versus Sandhagen fight will ever happen. Now for Featherweight here, I just want to get the golden timeline out the way earlier. Diego Lopes goes out there and slimes out Steve Garcia, and then we get the trilogy, baby. Oh yeah. Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopes 3. Book it. No, obviously I'm joking. But for me, the most nightmarish timeline is if they do end up giving Gene Silva the title shot, which it's looking like they're not, but you never know with the UFC. And if they did give him the title shot and he just completely went out there and knocked Volk out cold. Because not only would everyone be mad when this fight gets announced, being like, he did not deserve it at all, why can't Volk fight a real contender like Movzar or Aljo, someone like that. The fact that he would just get put out cold and probably retire after that fight makes it a lot worse, knowing that it's someone he shouldn't be fighting. And 100%, I would prefer Aljo or Movzar to get the title shot before Gene Silva, because I just don't want to see Gene Silva fight Volk, to be honest, after only picking up a win against Arnold Allen. But now on to lightweight and welterweight. I'm going to do these two as one, because this nightmare timeline sort of intertwines between the two divisions. And I'm going to say that Ilya goes out there and wins against Gaethje, Islam goes out there and wins against Ian Gary, and because I'm pretty sure that's the rumored fight for August. It's most likely going to happen. It's either him or Michael Morales, so Islam goes out there and wins against one of them too. Then from there, Islam takes a year off because he hurt his hand again or something like that. Then finally a year from then, we get an announcement for Ilya versus Islam at welterweight. But then that fight just plays out in one of the most uncompetitive ways, where Ilya's just way too small and he just gets tossed around the ring for 5 minutes in one of the most boring fights of all time. Now the golden timeline though is if this fight takes place at lightweight instead of welterweight, because then I think it'll be a lot more competitive, because I just don't think Ilya's going to be big enough at welterweight. And if the nightmare timeline did happen and it was just a complete boring fight, not only would that fight just be a complete disappointment, it also would set back a lot of fun matchups that both of them could have in their own divisions. And both these guys have expressed that they're not going to be around for much longer. For example, Ilya vs. Arman, that's a fight I really want to see, and Islam vs. Michael Morales or Ian Gary. Holy shit, my voice just cracks so bad, but fuck it, the show goes on. Coming in at middleweight for a nightmare timeline, I got Khamzat Chimaev taking some time off after the loss, and the UFC already telling him that they'll give him an immediate rematch no matter what. But in the meantime, Nasruddin Imavov goes out and fights Strickland for the belt and wins. Then we have one of the most uninteresting matchups that just nobody would really care about between Chimaev and Nasruddin Imavov. Although, I mean, at the end of the day, who knows what could happen in that matchup? Nasruddin is actually pretty good. Did happen again. Some fucking paranormal activity is going on today, and I don't like it one bit. The only plausible explanation for this is that when I went to a CVS earlier this morning and bought something, it asked me if I wanted to donate to an Israeli charity, and I clicked no. But moving on to light heavyweight, this one's pretty clear. The fact that Carlos Alberg, maybe he's out for more than a year, and we somehow get another Yuri Prochazka title fight. I can't be the only one thinking this. I'm sick and tired of seeing Yuri in title fights. Yeah, he's a fun fighter, but at some point it gets old seeing the same dude in title fights over and over again and constantly losing them. And I genuinely don't see a world where he beats someone like Magomed Ankalaev. And in this timeline, I really hope this doesn't happen, but if it got to the point where the UFC actually did strip Carlos Alberg, that would be a huge disappointment. Because there are a lot of fun and fresh matchups you could do with them, with a striker versus striker matchup if Roundtree somehow got into the picture. Or if Pereira ends up losing to Gane and ends up coming back down, that would be a fun and fresh matchup to watch. And honestly, I could definitely see Alberg winning that. But moving on to heavyweight, I got for this nightmare timeline Alex Pereira going out there and beating Cyril Gane and then going on to getting completely dismantled by Tom Aspinall. Because at some point, we need to see Cyril Gane versus Aspinall get ran back, and if Alex Pereira beats Gane, there's a possibility that fight never happens again. And the likelihood of Tom Aspinall just completely overpowering someone like Pereira is pretty high, and I honestly see that as the most likely outcome of that fight. And if Pereira did end up losing to Gane, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, because he could very easily get back in the title picture if he stays at heavyweight, because I could see them giving him someone like Volkov, and if he wins, they just give him the Tom Aspinall fight. But yeah, that's really going to do it. These are my nightmare timelines for all the divisions inside the UFC in the year of 2026. Let me know what your guys' nightmare timelines are, and I will see you guys in the next one.